On this week's episode of the Finding Strength podcast, we got Chief Josh Adams of the Orem Police Department and my good friend Jordan Lee, the Director of Operations Professional Services, co-founder of Deer Hollow Recovery and Wellness.
All the things.
Jordan.
All the things.
I know, I'm so excited.
He's all the things.
Yeah, this episode's rad, huh? Did you like it?
I did like it. I think it's going to affect a lot of people in a very good way. I think it will also give some confirmation to some people who are struggling and people who don't know how to ask for help. And yeah, cool. We're excited for you guys to hear it. But before, if you wouldn't mind going into Spotify and leaving us a 5-star review. At the top of the podcast page, you click the little 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. And then there you just click 5 stars and you're done. It'll take you 15 seconds. We only have 17 reviews. We want to get it up above 100 because that's when things really start working for us. Well, and then Apple Podcasts, leave a review as well. Whatever podcast platform you're on, if you can leave a 5-star review, that helps us a lot. It helps us to help other people. And that's our end game here, is to try and help as many people as we can. So if you guys can help us with that, you also are affecting other people's lives too.
Boom. We hope you like the new videos. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to Finding Strength podcast. Today with us, we have Jordan Lee, Director. Jordan Lee, Director of Deer Hollow. And then we have Josh Adams, who is Chief of Police in Orem.
Yes.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk with them about
awesomeness. We're going to have a great conversation.
We're going to dive into their stories and how you guys got into what you got into.
Yeah. Josh is my good friend. Jordan's my good friend. I travel around with Jordan all over the place. Jordan's been on the podcast before. You guys know him. We actually did episode 54 of the podcast was what's the name of that podcast? No One Fights Alone.
No One Fights Alone.
Yeah, Jordan and I were on there, and Josh was the host, and it was a really great conversation. So we kind of want to piggyback off that whole shebang thing. It was really awesome. But more than anything, we want to hear, we want to get to know you guys. We want to, because Jordan's been on the podcast. What, is this the 3rd time now? 4th?
3rd or 4th.
3rd or 4th.
You've had that many cancellations? I don't know. I don't listen to podcasts. So
he's just a guest only. No listening.
Yeah, yes.
But we don't know your story.
Yeah.
My origin story?
Yeah.
Like, we've never had you do it on the show.
No.
Do you want to give us the background? Let's kick it out with Jordan. Let's tell us.
Yeah, just give us a little story about you.
Take the next hour. Do you want a story or do you want a recap? Do you want a 30,000-foot view?
You do what you got to do, homie.
All right. Well,
you do what you think will help others.
For me, what's comfortable for me is to normally start off with, "Hey, I'm Jordan. I'm an alcoholic."
Okay.
An alcoholic in recovery.
Hi, Jordan.
Hey, that brings me home.
Oh,
there it is.
Good.
That baseline. We got it.
That brings me home. I am a through and through 12-step guy. But today I'm so many other things because of what I've been able to go through in my life. It's interesting. It's scary to talk about your life because if people listen to it, like your mom or your dad, and you're transparent and open about or vulnerable, we're always worried that people are going to hear, "Oh, I screwed up my son," or "Oh, I did." And yeah, you did. This is what we do. We damage other humans. So I started with, I'm the youngest. I grew up thinking that I was the youngest of 5 kids. And as I got older, it turned out I'm the youngest of 6. Mom gave a baby up for adoption. So I found an oldest brother, Montel, who lives in California, who's come back into my life. And I guess it goes back to childhood trauma or family dysfunction. I grew up without a dad. My dad was forced to leave the family when I was 2 years old. So I grew up not having a dad. And as you grow up, you don't realize that you didn't have a dad until you're at a friend's house and they make you go home for dinner because dad's home and it's time to eat. And that's when you're like, oh, that feels a little bit icky. It feels a little bit icky. And I grew up looking up to my older sister's boyfriends. And to be honest, my older sister's boyfriends were trash. My sisters did not know how to pick men, as most teenagers don't.
Well, their dad left.
Teenagers without
They didn't have an example. Yeah.
And so I made really poor decisions. I was kicked out of 5th grade. 3 different 5th grades I was kicked out of for fighting, because fighting was the first tool that I chose to use to deal with my emotions. Looking back at it, you understand that. But as a kid, you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. But I was fighting, and I was fighting with people mostly because I was always sticking up for somebody else. And as I got older, I realized that I was always sticking up for somebody else because I felt like maybe I needed somebody to stick up for me and someone to be there for me. And it always got me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And so what eventually happened is I got into drugs and alcohol, and I got kicked out of 8th grade. So I started smoking weed, started smoking cigarettes, started doing acid, mushrooms, heroin, like I said.
In 8th grade?
8th grade was mostly just acid, mushrooms, a lot of drinking. And in 8th grade, I was kicked out of school for drug distribution and wasn't allowed to go back.
Wow.
And with a single mom that works at 5 a.m. and comes home at 5 p.m. since I was in elementary school, it was really easy for me there's no one home. I remember being sent to alternative schools or given home packets, and I was home alone. So I became a drug dealer in Cottonwood Heights. That's what I did, is I sold drugs at a mom's house for the next couple of years. And it escalated to a point where I was doing meth and cocaine and hard drugs at a young age. And I remember being a runaway because I had an ankle monitor. Great people like Josh would stop me when I was doing bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was like, hey, screw these guys, screw the cops. They're out to get me. But the reality, looking back at it, they were there to save my life. They were there to put a stop. And every time I got locked up or I went to jail, I was pissed and I was upset and I was not guilty. like everybody thinks they are. But looking back, it was those short stays that saved my life, that prolonged my ability to gain a little bit of weight, to eat some food. And I was a runaway at a young age. And I remember I was gone for about 6 months. And on my 16th birthday, I called my mom at 10 at night and I said, I woke her up and she's crying. She's saying, where are you, honey? Come home. And I don't want her to hear that I'm crying, but I'm like, I love you, Mom. I just want to let you know. She's like, happy birthday. And I remember that. I'll never forget that. And I was near death at a young age, and I was doing awful bad things. And I got locked up. I got sent to a treatment center, and I did the 12 steps, and I got my life back. I was able to go back my senior year of high school because I had really great therapists. I had a good support team around me. My mom never gave up on me, and I got sober. And I got to wrestle varsity at Brighton High School for a little bit. I was a 4.0 student. I was on the honor roll. I dated the head cheerleader. My brother gave me a car, and I'd never been to a school dance. I'd never experienced school or life as a child. And the thing about when you get well is you get well and you're happy. And most people think, hey, I'm great. I'm going to get a good job. I'm going to get a good girlfriend. I'm just going to live my life. But one thing I did not know or understand is that I suffered from a fatal illness called alcoholism, that over any considerable time, it gets worse, never better. And when I left treatment, they said, hey, you have to do all these things. Well, none of those things were sexy. It was like, go to the Alano Club, be of service, do these things. Mm-hmm. What I decided to do was serve an LDS mission. I had 2 older brothers. One wasn't doing good things, and he didn't serve a mission. And it's kind of the norm in the community of Salt Lake to say, hey, I'm going to serve a mission. And so I sold my car, paid for my mission, and I went on a mission. I think I was the best missionary because I had a lot of life experiences at that time. And in the Midwest, I shoveled snow and talked about Jesus for 2 years is pretty much what I did. And I came home and I had a knee surgery. And when the pills ran out, I was dope sick again. I was 22 years old. And it woke up that monster inside of me that almost killed me as a child. I was married. This girl didn't know. She knew that I had those past issues, but what nobody knew is that I was suffering from a severe pill problem. It was so bad that when the pills ran out, rather than just stop or tell somebody that I had a problem, I got in a car and I drove to Mexico and I bought $10,000 worth of Oxycontin. And I came home and that was my business for the next couple of years. That's how I paid for the wedding. Everyone thought that I was a good return missionary and had a sales job downtown where I was flying to Mexico twice a week. And I was picking up a lot of Oxycontin and coming back and selling it. And it was really difficult because that $10,000 was $30,000 in 3 days. And I thought, I'm brilliant. I am so smart. This is gonna catapult me into great things in life. And after a lot of trips and a couple months down there, I had a bunch of money, and I had 30 grand strapped to my leg, and I was grabbed by a bunch of people in Mexico, bad people, and taken into a dark place. And I fought my way, and I ran. I ran out of that place, and I ran to the border, and that's when I decided I was going to start trying to get sober again. And the next 3 years of homelessness and despair were awful. I mean, I was so sick doing cocaine, meth, heroin, smoking crack, that I didn't lose. People say, oh, I lost my marriage, I lost my car. I gave all those things away.
Yeah.
I know where all of my stuff went because I gave it away and I traded it for drugs. And where it kind of ended is I was so sick that my toenails all turned black and popped off. My eye was swollen shut. My face was infected. I'd had multiple nasal surgeries because I was physically dying. I was spiritually dead a long time ago, but what eventually happens is, you're emotionally, mentally, spiritually sick, but physically I was dying. And near that end, I had met who's my wife today, Chantel, as a homeless, that was the condition I was in when I met my wife. I can't believe she married me.
We can't either, man.
I can.
And the crazy thing is that it was like, hey, a cheap bottle of $4 Kamchatka vodka in the morning. She loved Reese's Pieces, and we'd get a little bit of heroin and make it through the day. And for the next couple of months, we were kicked out of my mom's house, all of her friends' house, anywhere that we could stay. We were homeless together. We spent a night in an igloo, which was awesome. It was very interesting. That's a weird story. I came out of the igloo naked in a big Cottonwood Canyon because we were having sex in the igloo. Okay, I'm just going to
clearly be very transparent.
And there was a scout troop walking by. As I'm standing there steaming outside of this igloo, and I'm just like, oh shit. And that morning, it was like 6 a.m. I drove to my mom's house, and she let us stay there. She let us stay there for a couple of nights. She said, you can stay here for 3 hours. And we stayed there for a couple of days. My wife ended up going to jail, and I decided that I was going to stop. And I detoxed on the floor of a dope house. And I went back to the 12-step meetings, and I went to 3 meetings a day for the next 90 days. And I knew that I could stay sober if I just went from meeting to meeting to meeting and prayed with all of my heart that I didn't want to do this anymore, that I wanted to live. I made a decision that I wanted to live and I wanted to be happy. And I was able to get on a path of recovery with who is my wife today. And we have 3 beautiful children under the ages of 9. And I've dedicated my life to being of service.
Boom.
Yeah. What you've done.
Jordan is one of my best friends. I adore you, man. You're just the coolest dude. And we spent a ton of time together. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of freaking stories this guy has. I'm sure that they're like 95% true, but the 5% embellishment is what makes them great. Just kidding. No, they're all true. But
I might have to like reduce them a little bit
to make them believable.
to make it believable.
But in the end, the thing that Jordan always carries with him, man, is you are just love, dude.
Yeah.
You're the most loving, generous, kind human. And what I've found as I've been a part of this world of recovery and 12 steps and addiction and just the healing world is the people that are in it who are the healers. They've been through the most. They're the ones who have struggled the hardest. And in that struggle, in the pain, in the thick of life's darkest moments, they've learned more about what it means to be human than anyone else. And I think that that's kind of like the end all be all message of recovery and healing, is that our darkest moments define us in a way that we allow or that we create. And those dark moments can mean a whole hell of a lot, but that goes both ways. They can define us or we can define them. And I think what Deer Hollow has done and what you've done with your life, man, is you've just taken those dark moments and you've defined them. You've made them work for you rather than, you work for them. And that is one of the hallmarks of recovery. And I think that's a testament to what it means to recover. And it is an absolute gift to be able to spend as much time with you as we do.
I appreciate that.
That's true, man. It is. And it's cool to hear a story, huh?
Oh, it is. Like, I've heard little, but not that in depth.
And that's just this much.
Yeah. And that's not the whole thing. I'm sure there's plenty of stories. There's actually some stories I really want to hear now.
There's a lot of good stuff. And what I like in a recovery, it's like what happened, what it's like, and what it's like now. And I'm not able to touch on what it's like now, but I reflect on the last 16 years in recovery of the things that I've been able to do, not just in Utah, but in the country and around the world, being a member of a 12-step program and wanting to expand. Because my passion, I found my higher power through, my buddy always says, make the mess the message. And I love that because that's what I get to do. I get to talk about the mess and relate to somebody where nobody else can. Because when you can sit down across from somebody else that is suffering and said, why did this happen to me? That's exactly what I get to do. I said, hey, I've been there.
Yeah.
I felt that way and there's a way out. And that is powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty in it of what you've done is, you went through that and you recovered from that and you're still recovering. Like they say, like you're always recovering, correct? And so but you didn't stop there. Like you now do this for a living to help other people like get in recovery and help them. And that's a beautiful thing because I'm sure you've helped change so many other people's lives just because of your one story. And you didn't keep it to you. You know, it's like I always screw it up. The me over the we? No, we over the me.
We over me. We greater than me.
The we is greater than me. And I think that's a perfect example of what you do here today with Deer Hollow. It's really awesome.
Freaking dope. I love it.
Yeah. That's cool. And we got Josh.
Well, I mean, I kind of want to offer up my time back to Jordan to hear more about the sex in the igloo. That's more interesting.
The snow cave story. We'll get my wife on to tell her.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we need some permission
so,
first.
I want to find that Boy Scout troop.
I know.
Yeah,
we got some clients wandering around town, don't we?
I love it. Well, and then we have Josh here, who's chief of police. Like, tell us about your story and your background and what got you into what you're doing today.
Oh gosh. So I grew up in Utah. I come from a family of there was 5 brothers. I was number 3 of 5, and so my family dynamics were such. So my grandfathers, both my grandfathers, were World War II veterans that were just blue collar, hardworking people. The home environment that both my dad and my mom came from were tough. There were some difficult things that happened in them. And then my mom and dad came together. My dad he served on an aircraft carrier in Vietnam, and they got married, came to Utah, started a life, come from nothing. My dad's very much a blue collar individual. He spent his whole life as a lineman for the power company. And they're also very faithful people. I was raised in the Mormon church, with all that contributes to life. And then, let's see, when growing up, one of the things that I always struggled with was feeling like I was stupid, not smart. There were some things early on in first grade and so forth where I was sent for IQ tests and stuff because I thought I had learning disabilities. And I did have a speech disability, and I had some things. And I remember my entire growing up life feeling like I was stupid, and that the only way I was going to succeed was to be bigger, faster, stronger, something like that. And so I think it kind of hatched in me some sort of a little bit of a guardian / warrior, something like that. My thoughts were, okay, I'm going to either play in the NFL or I'm going to go join the Army.
Okay.
And I was fairly athletic. I actually got a full scholarship to play football, and had to turn it down because I had this conflict about that I was supposed to go on a mission too. So I did. And I don't devaluate that experience for what it taught me. I mean, kind of the same way you had with Snow and talking about Jesus. It's like, hey, if I can survive 2 years in a third world hellhole, big confidence builder. Yeah. And came home. I was a lot smaller by then, sickly. And I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I was working a couple of just jobs. My mantra has always been, if you can't work smarter, at least work harder.
Yeah, man.
And so I'm that's what I bring to the table is I know how to work hard. I can outwork most people I know. And my brother, just older than me, his name was Joe. He was 15 months older than me. He, from when we were little boys, was always going to be a police officer. I mean, around the house, like if it was a rule not to put your toys over here, he would post no putting your toys here by order of the Adams family sheriff. Things like that, I mean, he was very, he knew exactly what he was going to be his whole life.
Okay.
And so when I came home from that 2-year service, so I was 21, he's 15 months older than me. He was just finishing his police academy experience. And he's like, you should do this. And I'm like, I'm not smart enough. I'm dumb. Mm-hmm. And he encouraged me, and I remember always being petrified taking tests and stuff in the police academy. I was like, I'm not going to pass this. I'm not going to pass this. I'm not going to pass this. But I did. I got through it. Started in 1999 as a police officer, and then full time in April of 2000. I got married in that time. So 2001 started off as a wonderful year for me. I've got my full time dream job. My brother's down the road doing his. We were getting ready to buy our first little, shitty starter home. My now ex-wife, she was pregnant with our oldest girls. They're twins. They're 22 now. And life was felt like it was on a good launching point to go into whatever it is we do. In August of 2001, my brother was working on Friday night in Lehigh, Utah. He pulled over a car that had a fellow in it that was a dope dealer. And as he was arresting him, this person was able to retrieve a tiny little gun that he had and fire in it. A 22 round that actually hit my brother's clavicle, missed his armor, hit his clavicle, and then traveled down through his body cavity, aorta, lung, and then lodged into his spinal column. And it was a mortal wound. They estimated he lived for 20 to 30 seconds. But in that time, so as he fell back, paralyzed, mortally wounded, he, fired back on this kid, tore up his liver and so forth. And he drove north and he was eventually captured. My brother was flown to the hospital, died that night. And, that was, for me, it was like, okay, here's my mentor, but not just my mentor, but here's my brother and my closest friend, and the one that knew the dirt and the good. And nobody, when you, not to sound dark or anything, but it's like when that Dead Men Tell No Tales, there's some things that nobody's ever going to have to know because he was the only other person that knew.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was this huge disruption for me, but I didn't know how to deal with anything. Obviously it was traumatic, and I knew it was traumatic, but it was the first time I ever felt what I now recognize to have been just traumatized. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could attach myself to was I know how to work hard. So I took the department's policy was 3 days bereavement leave. So I took 3 days off and I went right back to work. And, I knew I couldn't quit or anything like that, because it's like, we got twins on the way. We just closed on this house. It's like, I'm bound to this. And about a week and a half after that instance happened, his death, I was working in a person identified, my name's Josh Adams, his was Joe Adams, so J Adams on a nameplate on a police uniform. A kid that we were arresting for something, I don't even remember what it was, he recognized the name and he's like, so was that your brother over in Lehigh? And I'm like, yeah. And then he started to basically talk shit about my brother. And I tried to kill him.
Oh, man.
right there on the side of the street, essentially. And it was literally police officers taking a police officer and putting him in the back of a car and getting him out of there so that he didn't. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my poor coworkers, you know, they take me just to the station and drop me off in the squad room. Like, yeah, just sit there, man, chill out, you know? And I was like, oh no, because anger is something that I've never had the best temperament, but that was probably the first time where I went like, I exploded.
Berserk. Like uncontrollable.
Oh, I was
like
gone.
you were gone. Like it, yeah.
And my commander at the time came down. Apparently, obviously somebody complained, as they do, and should have. Mm-hmm. And basically came down, and his message to me was, if you ever do that again, you're fired. And from that moment on, the way I internalized that to me is, all right, man, you can't feel anything anymore.
Yeah.
Get hard. Yeah. And so I did. I took that, I know how to work hard, now I'll be hard. And coming from, I remember my department head at that time, a quote from him when it came to mental health type things: if you need that kind of help, you don't belong in this line of work. So it's like, I can't even talk about this to anybody. And I couldn't talk to my ex-wife about it. And she couldn't talk to me. In hindsight, she couldn't talk to me about what she was going through. So it's like, here's these people grieving in different ways, but they can't even talk to each other about it because we don't know how. And then, you know, a month later, it's September 11th. And, you know, and I remember sitting on the floor in this crappy house we just bought, pulling staples out of the floor to put in the new carpet so that we could actually move into it. It was in rough shape. Listening to the radio as they were talking about, I'm like, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what's next?
Yeah.
And then my daughters were due to be born in January, and my ex-wife in mid-November went into the hospital one day because she wasn't feeling well. They're like, you're having them now. And so it's high-risk, preemie baby thing.
Yep.
And that was, it's tough to describe because for me it was, there was so much fear and anxiety and everything going into that. But at the same time, they couldn't come soon enough. Because once they came and they were going to, and they were very touch and go for survival for about a week. But once they were kind of like, they're going to make it, you know, that was kind of the, here comes the sun moment. And, you know, right at the end of that year, you're like, hey, I can actually survive.
Right.
You know? And, but to fast forward from there, you know, I never felt like I could talk to anybody about it. And people would always be like, you know, things would constantly get brought up, like, hey, your brother, and, you know, it's a bit of a notoriety type thing. The fellow that killed him he obviously was captured, sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. And I tried to seek as much normalcy as I could without having a connection. So in a marriage where we were never really well connected to begin with, it was almost a failure to launch at that point anymore. And we are continuing. Like I adore my ex-wife. She's a wonderful person. We're very amicable, very close that way. But, you know, we've kind of discovered in hindsight of everything, you know, because that sense of doom and stuff never left. Every day I went to work, I was planning on dying. Yeah. I worked like I knew I was going to die. And she wondered every day which one of the days was the one I'm going to die. Because her experience with law enforcement was like, you guys get killed.
Yeah. And
so there was a lot of tough dynamics in that relationship. And in 2008, my oldest brother, Chris, who was 4 years older than me, well, take it back, he was about 3 years older than me. He'd been treated for a heart condition, open heart surgery and stuff, and actually twice. And then he was a very fit person, like ride my bike to work, run every day, go to the gym. he's on a business trip in LA, does his meetings, does his dinner, and then he's on the treadmill in the hotel that they're in downtown LA running, and he had a rupturing thing in his heart, aorta, and basically dropped dead. So, he was 36. So 34, 26, 34, and I'm not only the doom thing just compounded again, because it's like, man, we just don't live very long here. We're a bunch of lemons, aren't we?
Gosh.
And,
How old are you, Josh?
I'm 47.
47.
Yeah. So I'm the first one to hit 35, 36, 37, clear through 47. And,
Wow, man.
And for me, one of the things that I've learned about myself is I was operating into this, hey, today's my last day under the sun. Yeah. Every day. Being a little, so, when it came to relationships and things like that, it's like, I don't want people to miss me. So it's like, okay, well, don't be, and work hard, do the best you can on this planet, because one of these days you're going to drop dead too.
Yeah.
And
I don't want people to miss me.
Yeah. You go to funerals and stuff, you see people bawling, and it's just like, I don't want people to cry over me. I'm good.
But what did you want them?
Well, I didn't want to die, but if I a nice neutral exit.
Oh,
Okay.
Good game.
Yeah.
Right? High fives, everybody. Carry on.
Good game.
Right?
I'm totally in that.
you did it.
But is there a neutral exit at such a young age?
No, and that's the thing. None of it was rash. But in my mind, it's just like,
but it's what got you to work the next day.
How can I?
And that's the
motivator
motivator
out of here.
Yeah.
Well, and that's your motivator for a lot of the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is not unique to just you, is it? I mean, this is like cultural almost, right? But that's a really interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to miss me.
I just don't want to be missed.
Yeah.
So what am I going to have to do in order to prevent being missed? How does that look in my life?
This is going to happen, but I don't want this. How do I make this happen?
Yeah.
And so far hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But I still struggle with that sometimes.
I bet.
I'm sure.
Okay, how much longer am I going to be around? And and now I'm getting to the age where it's like, man, it's not even going to be something cool. At least they died with their boots on. I'm going to be the one that's like dying in a hospital bed or something, pissed off because I didn't have something cool happen.
You want to go to Valhalla?
I want out.
Yeah, warrior's death, man.
Yeah. So, and anyways, so I learned working hard. I worked hard, and then I worked harder, and I worked harder. In 2005, I broke my leg really bad at work, and it's all full of metal and everything now. But got a little bit of a disability settlement from that, and I was like, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to go get myself a college degree. Nobody from my family had ever gone to college. Nobody had graduated, everything like that. And it was my counteract to being stupid. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go get me a bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. And so it took me 10 years. I mean, that money didn't go very far, obviously, but then working a part-time job to pay. So over the course of the next 10 years, working full-time, working a side job to pay for college and getting college done. Again, it's just like, if I work hard, I don't feel. The harder I worked, the less I felt. Mm-hmm. And I knew, I was very conscientious of that. It's like, just work hard and then you don't feel anything, man. And wake up, work till you're exhausted, and go to sleep. And then I accomplished that in 2016, and I had about 3.5 years left before I could retire at 20 years as a police officer, and which is kind of what my intention was. And I put in for working in Orem, which is larger, and having a lot of different responsibilities there. I had a great career. It's been very dynamic. It's been fun. A lot of cool stuff. I put in for their chief of police job, Linden. It's a small 15-man department. It's like, hey, this could be kind of like a little bit of a parachute to coast into that 20-year mark. Better money towards my pension, all these things. So let's do this. I put in for it with no expectation, and I actually got the job. And so I was like, okay. So I show up in Linden as the chief of police, and it's a great community. Everybody loves their police, not a lot of crime. And I was kind of bored because I couldn't, and so what had happened is basically I'd been this guy that I could find stuff to do to stay busy until I was exhausted, to where it's like, now I'm sitting in this office, she's out there answering the phone, she's my personal assistant that handles
Everything
80% of my job anyway, just sign here, and I'm like,
where's the work?
Yeah,
that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
And so what happened to me was all of the emotion, trauma, things like that from a lot of cases, exposure to things, death scenes, all the way back to, with my brother and everything like that. I couldn't stay away from it. I could not run it anymore. I could not work it. And so I'm sitting in this office, or I'd be in a meeting, and I would feel that grief come on. And I mean, I would literally run out to my vehicle and get in. And I had a pack of Charmin out there, and I would bawl my guts out. I'd go drive somewhere quiet and just bawl. And I'm like, what is my problem?
Not working hard enough. You're feeling it.
And it's like, why can't I? And it's like, this just keeps happening and I can't avoid it. And it's like, I feel it coming and I know it's coming, so I can like escape so that people don't see it. But it's like, I can't stop.
Yeah.
And I felt very hopeless. That's when I was starting to have a lot of marriage problems, some problems with my personal beliefs, just a lot of stuff. And I got to be very unhappy with myself. I'd accomplished this, got my degree, and like nothing made me happy. I have 4 beautiful daughters who are thriving and doing great things, and it's like, why can't I be happy for them? Yeah. And so I'm pissed off at myself. And absolute zero hope, some hopeless, like I'm done. I knew exactly what I would do if I decided to actually do something like that. But I told myself, okay, you're not a pansy. Go talk to a therapist, just so you can check that box. So before you whack yourself, just at least that way people can say he tried.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I know that just sounds, it's stupid to even say, but it's like, yeah, I was actually in that space once upon a time. And
I don't know if it's stupid, man.
On the top of my game, and I just crashed.
I think what's important that we just have to highlight for a sec is like men in general. We won't even just talk first responders. We'll just talk men in general. Mm-hmm. There's this thing, and I'll speak for myself. I gotta freaking do this thing called life. I gotta take care of my family. I gotta show up. I gotta produce something. I gotta create something. Hopefully I leave some little mark on the world, right? And that takes a lot of time and energy and effort. And if I can do that without asking for a lot of help, like how much more badass am I? Mm-hmm. And then if I have to ask for help, like maybe I'm not as strong as I thought I was. Mm-hmm. And that mentality is so insidious that it begins to like permeate the subconscious, where I'm not even deciding to do that anymore. That's just what actually happens without even intentionally doing it, because it's so deep within my behavioral day-to-day. And I think the thing that's so hard about stepping back, like you did, Josh, and even like you did, Jordan, and I've done and Brittany's done, and is stepping back and going like, hey, something's not working here. I can see how things before I could outwork it, or I could run from it and numb it. I could numb it or run from it and outwork it, right? I did all those things. And then eventually you're met with this challenge. You're at the precipice and you look out to the future and you go, this is unsustainable. Something's got to give here. And that is the moment of actual courage, of true strength, where I've got freaking Charmin in the freaking car. I'm hiding from everybody, and I'm sitting there and I'm doing my absolute best to hold it together and keep up appearances and make sure everybody knows that I got everything together. The real moment of courage is coming out of that car with the Charmin in hand, snot bubbles coming down my face, and going like, this is not something I can do alone. I need some help. Let's go talk to a sponsor. Let's go talk to a therapist. Let's go talk to my wife. Let's go talk to my friends. Let's be a fucking man and be powerful and be courageous. And I think that is, for me, such an important part of what we're doing with Dear Hollow, with the podcast, with just what we do in general, is trying to flip the script on this idea that vulnerability or asking for help is weakness. And your story is a brilliant example of doing that. Exactly. Because you when I'm at this place where I can't go any further without help, the saddest, most pansy, I love that you said pansy.
I know, pansy, yeah.
I don't want to say pathetic, but really like, I don't know, tragic thing is to just hide, continue to hide. Because as you come out from behind the hiding Charmin draped walls, you really begin to find out who you actually are. And I think that's really hard. I mean, I can imagine how difficult that was for you to do.
Like I said, I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew I was falling and I couldn't stop falling. I was I'd worked my whole life. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, and I couldn't outrun my shit anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, how do I package this thing up? You know, to make it look the prettiest before I punch out.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to, so in my professional circles, I'd been part of some training and stuff for dealing with people having psychotic episodes and stuff on the street. So like consumers of mental health services and stuff. And it's like, okay, I know this particular person who's a psychologist, great lady. She had actually retired from the state. And she had kind of maintained a little once or twice a week practice just to keep her feet wet. And I reached out to her and, I called the office, scheduled an appointment, canceled it. Called the office, scheduled an appointment, canceled it.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the times I did it, cause it's like, I know it's going to happen. It's not even worth the $40. You know, I'll just save $40 in the copay and not, you know.
Yeah. I already know what they're going to tell me.
Yeah.
I know what I need to do. I just got to do it.
Yeah. You know, it's not going to fix me.
Right.
And, but on the third time I went, I remember sitting down in her little office thing and she's got a little couch and I sat down and I cried for an hour. There was basically no conversation. And
because that space available for you, you felt safe.
It is the first time I ever felt empathy in my life.
Okay. Wow.
I didn't even know that that's what that was.
Yeah.
But it's like, she's literally holding space. I mean, she's sitting there probably just like, I guess I'm getting paid, but I'm like, you know, this is watching this dude just run through my tissue boxes here. And, and then, you know, as things were, she's like, I think I can work with you and I'll see you next week. That was it.
Perfect. Good.
You know? And,
yeah, I do. I love that. Yeah.
And so I started, and so that turned into this cycle of, for about 18 months, every Wednesday afternoon, I was in therapy. I mean, it cost a fortune. But and the thing of it is there was such a stigma behind it. Like, I was like, nobody can know I'm doing this.
Totally.
Yep.
No one can know, to where you would have thought I was the dope dealer. The way I would drive to her office, she lived her office was in a different city. And so it's like, I would take back roads. I would even go into a cul-de-sac. It's called washing. So like dope dealer and stuff, they'll pull into cul-de-sacs to do a U-turn to make sure nobody's following them. I mean, I'm doing things like that completely rational. Hoodie up, sunglasses on to walk into this office. Cause like, I don't want anybody knowing I'm going to a therapist because it'll blow up.
Because if they do, then what?
What? Yeah.
Because if you need this kind of help, you don't belong in this line of work.
Right.
I'm still stuck.
Because that's what you were. Well, and that's what you were told by your chief in the very beginning. So you have this culture already. Yeah. Yep.
So it's like, you know, and all these, if my people find out, there goes all of my credibility. And
did you ever think that you would lose your job and then not get your retirement? Was that
potentially? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But part of it, honestly, at that point is like, I don't even care.
Because you're at the point where you're like,
anyways.
I'm going to off myself. I better do something else.
And, you know, I had a couple $1 million worth of life insurance ready to go. I knew exactly what how I could die so the policy was still good. I mean, it was just creepy, you know,
creepy,
but reality.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
reality.
I was
though.
covering
yeah.
my bases.
Yes.
I wasn't being sloppy about it.
No, yeah.
but, dude,
You're so kind.
Yeah.
You're so kind.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's hard to play this dual person, right? It eventually takes a toll on us that
you can't do it.
You
It's
can't. You
unsustainable.
can't. It is unsustainable. And so, there is the taking myself out or
Yeah, I knew
asking for
exactly.
help.
I mean, it's like I dealt with hundreds of suicides. It's like I know exactly how to do this to make it.
Dude, I can't even tell you how
Slick.
many times. I can't count how many times I've had somebody tell me that exact thing. You've heard it too, Jordan.
Yeah, you could write the manual.
You've heard it, Josh.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's innate to want to continue to protect. And this is the scariest thing about suicide. This is what I talk about when I go and do my talks and stuff. Is that deep down, there's this strangely almost altruistic desire to rid the world of the problem that is me.
Me.
Yes.
Yeah, that was me.
I am this burdensome thing, and this burden that I bring to the world, I can make the world a better place without me, which is so backwards. That's just never, ever, ever true. But in the short term, that feels very true because of all the stuff that I carry. But what if I could unload that stuff? What if I wasn't carrying it anymore? What if these burdens that I have now kind of like personified and over-identified with, what if I could unload those burdens? What if I could free myself of them? Would I no longer feel like a burden? And that's kind of hopefully the question that people begin to ask themselves as they start toying with this idea of asking for help is, what am I carrying that I believe is burdensome to the world? Holding that in and never talking about it doesn't help anybody. Yeah. I have to offload that somehow. Yeah. And talk therapy is a great way to do it. Mm-hmm. It's not the only way. There's many different ways to do it. But offloading it is it's the goal. You got to figure out some way to take this thing that feels so burdensome and so dark and so scary and so painful and flip it, make the message thing. Yeah. It's got to work for you. And if you can do that, man, it's another ballgame. It's a game changer.
Well, I feel like that's why we're here today, right? Is to start changing that culture. Because it's the culture. Like you walked into this station and they're like, yeah, shut down your feelings. If you can't do this, then you shouldn't be signed up for this. And that's why I feel like Matt and Jordan, you guys travel the world to like break the stigma. And I feel like making a difference is letting people know that you can go another route. Right.
Yeah. And now Josh is, next week we're going to be up in Layton and Josh is getting on a stage telling his story.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm
going to be there.
Yeah.
We'll see ya. That's cool.
Did you pay for a ticket?
No, because I slept with the owner of the podcast.
How would it be?
I know how to get in.
Me too. Just kidding.
But no, Matt, I also love what you said about suicide because I feel like there's people who hear about suicide and they get so angry at the person. Like, why would you do that to me? And they turn it and make it onto them, right? But when people are feeling suicidal, they really feel like they are adding a burden to this world. They're not in their right mind. They don't know that that's not actually what's going on. It's the unloading that they need to unload and stuff. And so I think how you put that was very beautiful, that, suicide, when they get to that point, is they feel like they're adding a burden to the world that they can take out and then the world will be better. They truly believe that.
It's the lies we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
I want to know the 18 months of therapy that you did. What do you think was the most drastic shift in action that you took in that 18 months that pulled you out of that place? And what was it?
Her teaching me what trauma was, being able to feel empathy, like it's like, oh, this is actually safe. I'm not
what is safe?
Yeah, what is
talking
safe?
about
Talking about
Okay.
it is safe.
Yeah.
If I sneak in the back door and
But the conditions are right. It's very
The
safe.
safe
Put my hood on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
But the interesting about that is kind of an aha that I had was a few months into that process. the question I remember asking myself is, why are you being so quiet? Why are you being so paranoid? Why are you, like, basically, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was still married. I let her know.
How long did you hide it from your wife?
A couple months.
Yeah. So after a couple months, you'd finally tell her. And
I was
then,
like, hey, just so you know, because I had, going before.
I've been cheating on you with a therapist.
I'm seeing another woman every Wednesday for the last 2 months.
Yeah. And because before that, I mean, I had gone to the EAP one once a few years before, one time. And I remember when I started unpacking some of the stuff from work, it was a particular death situation I handled. And she was absolutely, this poor 25-year-old grad student, whatever, EAP clinician, was completely traumatized by what I was telling her. Like, she was starting to physically react to what I'm telling her. And I'm like,
Of course she was.
oh my God. And so I was like, if what I'm telling her happened to me is traumatizing a therapist, I must be screwed beyond any redemption at all. I am gone.
Never tell another soul.
Yeah.
A further reason to think that I'm a burden. I can't even tell anybody. They can't handle it.
Yeah.
This is the pro. This
I'm
is
too
the
much.
professional ear,
Yeah.
and I'm making it bleed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, and then we'd gone through some marital counseling, and that never resonated with me. That's
Jordan.
Marital counseling's rough, man. It's not
It is
cool.
rough.
Yeah.
It's rough, especially if
I got
they're
pissed off
not.
at the therapist. They always pissed me off. Like, they'd go after her, and I'd be like, "Don't go after her." I don't know. I was in this attack mode the whole time. But anyway,
Protect her.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Protect mode.
yeah, he did. One time, I remember one being like, telling her, "You need to be more like him," and I'm like, the last thing she needs to be is more like this. This is the problem.
I'm going to need you to holster that hypothetical pistol.
Oh, dude. Yeah, and that was the last time I ever went to that bozo. But anyways, I kind of had that. And so I told my secretary and I told my personal assistant, and I started telling people, I'm like, well, and I'm being me, and I'm sarcastic, and I'm kind of that way. I was like, yeah, every Wednesday I go get the air pressure checked in my head.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I got to make myself.
It's a checkup.
I'm a dope. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is in a department. There's only 15 police officers there. Within a couple of weeks, this little trickle effect of guys coming in, closing the door, being like, "Tell me more about that," or "I think I could use that kind of thing," and I'm like, "Shit, yeah." Then let's get. And so I started on my own. Okay, here's somebody that's local. Here's an EMDR guy. And so I'm reading the books, and I'm like, I had no idea about any of this crap. And probably shouldn't call it crap. We're on a podcast.
You can call it crap.
Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Stuff, crap, shit.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So we started sending. So I set up things for these guys to be able to go, and so we kind of created our own in-house, semi-secret EAP to get people to people, and started getting really good results to where I had over 50% of my people within a matter of a couple of months that were getting that help.
What are some of the changes that you saw departmentally, individually with the guys who started going?
I think there was more grace towards one another. I think there was different. I think those outward mindsets, being able to see things, it's not, people don't necessarily need a full scale change in their view.
Right.
But it's like, if you can tweak that just a couple of degrees, that can make all the difference.
Right.
The job's not going to be different, but if your view of that is different, even just a little bit,
I like that.
not distorted, but just a little different focus,
Yeah.
makes all the difference in the world in how you're able to do it. Yeah. And so it was that kind of, there was a lot of positivity about it. And, the awesome thing about it too was, they knew I was going, so there's no stigma for them to be going.
Right.
If I'm doing it, I can, and so rather than that, if you need that kind of help, you don't belong in this line of work. And unintentionally, it kind of created more like, if you're not getting that kind of help, maybe you don't belong in this line of work, and
Flip the script.
Yeah.
and so that kind of started getting in a good space and everything. And then, in 2020, when I was ready to announce that I was going to retire, I was also getting divorced, COVID, all the police stuff and everything. The chief of police that was in Orem retired, and a lot of my friends and so forth, they were like, you should come over here and do this one. And Orem had a lot of issues right then. They just had, so one of my partners in sex crimes, he had just ended his life, 17 years on the job. And there was just a lot going on there, with some behavior and some performances and so I went there with no other, so I applied for it, ended up getting it, but my whole intention was to change these things. And one of the first things that we did was create a, policy where everyone will get wellness checks.
Awesome.
It's paid for the department.
Awesome.
It's on our time. It's on our dime. You will. And to kind of dumb it down for, skeptics and inside the department and everything, it's like, hey, we all go to the dentist and get our x-rays and our teeth polished every 6 months.
Yes.
That's a wellness check.
Yeah.
There's no stigma behind that. So why not, if our mind is our most valuable tool and where most of the liability is, where every problem and every solution generates in the mind of people in this line of work, how about we maintain that thing a little better?
Yeah.
And so, inside of that, making that mandatory, the stigma was completely erased. You cannot walk through that building anymore and wonder who's going to see a therapist, because everyone is going to see a therapist.
That's awesome.
And then they can get all the follow-up ones and everything. And I mean, these aren't cheap things, but it's pennies on the dollar when it comes to what it costs to try and replace somebody.
Yes.
So instead of hey, you can't do this anymore and you're gone, or we're going to get rid of you, you're dismissed for your alcoholism or anything like that, it's let's restore this guy.
Yeah.
And a restored human being is a redeemed human being, and is a powerful human being, and is an ambassador, and is that person is now a subject. The people that you treat at Deer Hollow, they come out of there, and in my mind, they are a subject matter expert on recovery, on trauma, on stuff like that, because they just did the deep dive. Yeah. They should be celebrated. They should be welcomed back with open arms.
They're a resource now.
Oh yeah. It's like this person now has the ability. I'm a fixer in my job, but that's now a healer, much like you in my mind, where it's like they actually have lived it.
Well, once you learn how to heal yourself, you can teach others how to heal. That's kind of how it works. I mean, I like to say you can't push rope. Yeah. Right? You try and push, the rope doesn't get pushed. If I want to help somebody up the hill and I want to drag them up the hill, I got to get up in front of them. I got to start pulling them along, right? Like, we can't keep trying to push people into things. We got to pull people towards things, and I got to be the first one to do it. And that's what you did in your department.
Yeah, and it's just been, it's been very positive. And so, First Watch, that's what we do, is let's implement these practices in departments. Let's get rid of the stigmas. Let's make this normal. So your young entry-level officers, and to kind of maybe to try and quantify the issue that we deal with. So in Utah, which is actually a pretty pro-police state, things like that, we have about a 47% failure rate in retention of our new officers. So from day 0 to year 4, about 47% of our police officers leave the job completely.
Within 4 years.
Yeah, within the first 4 years.
What's that number again?
About 47%. So it's a 50% failure rate. So one in every other guy that we hire statistically is going to quit in that first, 20% of their career, because of, there's external factors, like we're competing with the virtual market. I mean, when they've got friends that are sitting in their boxer shorts typing code all day making more money, you got to try, I get it. But, if you feel duty and if you want, and we're asking you to be here at a time wearing a certain uniform, performing a certain function versus playing Warcraft and programming all day.
Yeah.
So it's what kind of life do you want to have? And some go different ways. But that being exposed to things where you're like, man, this sucks.
Right.
Or it's 3 a.m. on Christmas morning and I'm driving around in a black and white police car versus home in bed, or, I'm going to miss Christmas morning, and the things like that. So, you know, as we to sell it to help departments and stuff understand the what this costs us, you know, it's $125,000 to recruit, background, pre-employment, train, hire, equip a new police officer.
125 grand per person.
That's the initial investment into putting them to work before they get in a car on their own and go do their job.
And then after 4 years, they quit.
And and if half of those guys are leaving within 4 years, it's
double.
more like you're paying about $250,000 per one that sticks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's just the aggravation of the people that the field trainers and all that kind of stuff that are doing all the teaching and trying to develop these guys in those time, and then they leave, which is demoralizing for a police department as well. But one of the things that impacts in some of the exit interviews and stuff that I've had is the mental strain and things like that, not feeling equipped. So part of what a wellness program does that is so from that infancy stage through, you're okay to talk about your frustration. You're okay to, here's a therapist you can go air it out with and can help with those things. And that's increasing to where right now you've got that 47% number is not my number. My number is more like about 8%. Because
of your wellness program.
I think it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Because it sends a message.
Yeah.
What do you think the message that's being received really is when you come in and say, hey, I'm going to implement this department wide. Not only is this mandatory for everybody, but we're now going to make this cultural. Mm-hmm. What's the message that's being sent or received? Was it intentional or unintentional?
I think that's more that creates, you know, when people say, oh, this is my family. It's like, we mean it.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah. So there's trust built there.
Well, I think so. And we all like I have a therapy appointment today at 4.
There you go.
Everybody. And I want to say even just trust. He's like, yeah.
And
you're not putting your hoodie on or anything.
No.
What were you going to say, Brindy?
I was going to say, I think it also creates safety.
Yeah.
Like these men are coming in or women are coming into this job that is unsafe and putting themselves in unsafe space, but knowing that their department has this trust and this safety, I think that creates a lot for them to have that. Yeah.
You know, I get more appreciations, if you will, from people for having that program than when we bump up their pay. You know.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, just as important, you know, if we're struggling to keep these young people, okay, but when we have our 10 and our 15-year guy who's been through the gauntlet, the ability to be able, I mean, his value. So if this new guy leaving is worth 125, well, how many millions of dollars in training and experience and everything is behind this veteran guy?
Yeah.
So you're telling me that sending this guy through anything treatment-wise, all the way through residential, is not pennies on the dollar to what his actual value is. You know, so helping people in my position and stuff see that, hey, these guys they're invaluable, and not only just to restore them to be like, hey, we want to get you from 15 to 20, but if you feel redeemed for that time too, now you're that ambassador. Now you're that rah cheerleader, where it's like, you know, some of my guys that have gone through some, you know, IOP or RTC and things like that, they come back and they're like, we need to get an ice bath, we need to get a sauna, we need to get, you know, they're the ringleaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the ringleaders. It's like, in some respects, I'm sitting back. It's like these peer support people are running the show now. I just
Which is awesome. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it becomes that, because they do. And talking to them, it's like, they're like, I have a whole new lease on life. I have an outlook on life. I've been healed, redeemed, whatever it is, where it's like, I love that you use redeemed. Better than I was before.
Yeah.
I just love that term, redeemed.
Redeemed,
man.
yeah.
It's just
it gets hijacked in religion and stuff, I think.
But
a human being
redemption.
Yeah, everyone wants redemption.
We want to be redeemed, not just, some dude's going to redeem me someday.
Yeah, because what is redemption really? It's this opportunity for rebirth.
I'm better than I was.
Yeah.
All this stuff that happened to me, it happened for a reason, and I've made it through it, and now I'm glad that I made it through it, and I'm glad that it happened, and I'm grateful for all of it. I mean, that's the end all be all for me when it comes to redemption. Is I'm not going to look back and go like, let's strike that from the record, strike that. No, all of it matters.
All of it,
because it's defining my redemptive value.
Well, and then when you feel redemption, you want to go share that with someone because it feels so good.
Yeah.
And that,
It's like, I'm better.
yeah.
I found a life hack.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I'm going to share that with this person because I love this person. I'm going to share with this person. So that's really cool that your department's kind of taking that on. So do you feel like the culture of that is changing?
Yes.
Good.
Significantly. Yeah. To where, like I said, I mean, it's now more peer driven than
That's awesome.
leadership driven.
That's awesome.
Which is where it should have always been.
Yeah.
And I look at it as, man, that would have been cool to have 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
I'd have had a much better lived experience over the course of those same 20 years if I'd have had some things like that. But rather than, kick a rock, it's like, well, at least I know that these guys have a better opportunity and things like that. And I think industry wide, that's a big awakening people are having is it's like, hey, we've actually been really, really, really bad at taking care of our people.
Yeah.
Really bad. So how about we not be really bad anymore about taking care of our people?
That's awesome. Yeah. So for you and Jordan, like what is it that you guys are doing today to like keep this going and changing the culture?
Well, what comes to mind, your department, how cool is that? Everything that we just got to talk about. And we were at a training in Marion County, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And there was another chief that got up and he said kind of what you did. He stood up in front of everybody and said, that is my therapist, because we had the therapist in the room. I see her every week and she saved my life.
That's awesome.
That is not very rare.
Yeah.
What that guy did and what you've done in Orem. And I was thinking, we've been to 100 different departments, agencies, and trainings in the last 2.5 years. And a lot of people say it. A lot of people invite us in, say, hey, will you come and do this tactical trauma training for our guys? Hit the A shift, hit the B shift, and they'll dedicate 4 hours to it. But I don't want to disrespect anyone, but then it stops there.
They check the box.
They check a box, and they say, hey, we did it.
We did our
brought
duty.
you guys in. Hey, we've got the wellness app that's going to tell you should sleep better and work out and maybe get in an ice bath, right? But then to stand up in front of everyone and say, I'm doing this, and to lead by example, to do what's happening in your agency, it trickles down. And that is not very common. And we only cover mostly, aggressively the Pacific Northwest. And compared to 5 years ago, it's a drastic change. It's night and day to even invite us in to do a 4-hour or an 8-hour training, or to spend that time with them, or to invite us into their house and to have that conversation. But there's so much more fear associated with it. Their fear, because it's hard to get guys to work today, is if these guys admit that they have a problem, will they leave the profession?
Quit.
And that is, it's selfish, right? But it's a reality. You know, how many people come forward and say they can't do this job anymore? And the goal isn't to say that you can't do the job anymore, but to do this job, you need to be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what we've found as far as like a pattern goes is that reckoning with reality is inevitable. Eventually, without help, if we keep this culture of not asking for help alive, inevitably people are going to leave early and retire early and quit early. It will happen. And we're not just going to have a retention problem within the first 4 years. We're going to have an early retirement problem. And actually that's what the literature says. Yeah. Like we know that early retirement is a major problem because we're not implementing systems of support, which is what people are begging for. And this is the and I'll be bold here, the extremely frustrating part of doing what we do as we go around is being met with active opposition to our very, clear intent to want to help and save and get people back to work. But we're met with active opposition from people in positions like Josh's saying, no, we don't want you here because we're afraid of this thing that's going to happen. We're afraid of that thing that's going to happen. And so what I think the nature of the dynamic right now is we're in this weird holding pattern in some places, but we have to recognize that this holding pattern is being perpetuated by a lot of fear. People are very, very afraid. They're afraid to lose people. They're afraid that things are going to get worse. They're afraid that nothing's going to change. And historically, what does fear always bring? It always brings the same results. Stagnation. It brings emptiness. It brings more of the same. It's fear's design is to prevent change. And to be an agent of change, you have to stare fear in the fucking face, and you have to look at it and you have to go, no, I'm going to go for it anyways, because that is what I am about. And that's what it takes to ask for help. That's what it takes to implement change in your department. That's what it takes to implement change in your life. Right. You know, and of course I'm going to bring up the cold because it's one of my favorite things in the world. Right. But like the reason why the cold is so freaking awesome is because it's terrifying. You look like we get in every single morning. I looked at this morning. I got up. Yesterday was a rough day. Just went to sleep. It was just a weird day. Didn't end how I wanted it to end by no means. And I got up this morning, had a rough conversation between me and Brindy, and we're just trying to figure some stuff out right now. We're in kind of like a weird, I don't know, self-discovery thing, which is normal and it's good. And I was like, this is stupid, so dumb. Like I'm upset, I'm frustrated. I know I got to do this today. I'm just like, life is kind of dumb right now. I'm just, screw it. I'm not going to do it. And then I walk right up to that cold ass water and I look right at it and I can feel the pang of fear. And I can feel it taunting me, right? Like, you little bitch, you can't do it. You're not going to get in. And I'm like, screw this. And I get in. And that's what has to happen every single day. You have to stare fear right in the freaking face and you have to say, no, I'm doing it anyways. I'm coming for you. And if you don't, it'll eat you alive. And that's, in my opinion, what's happened in first responder culture. We have let fear drive our decision-making, and it's led to death, and it's led to suicide, and it's led to pain and hurt and kids without dads and moms. And that is tragic. And so our charge as we go out and we travel around, what we do is we boldly go where no man has gone before. No, we boldly shout change. And that has to be met with opposition. And I get it, but it's extremely frustrating to be met with as much opposition as we have. I don't know. I don't know why I brought this up, but it's just, it's I don't know. What do you think, Jordan?
We fear change.
We do. It's crazy, man.
It's a Wayne's World quote. I don't know if you've seen it when Garth is like, we fear change, drinking a Pepsi. You asked what we're doing. That's all we do is get out there in front of people. And when I put together a flyer, I don't know, 3 years ago and said, hey, we want to come and talk to your people. We'll, and see what happens with Jared. Jared Nesri's the third member of the Godhead, with Matt and me. The Trinity.
You guys kill me.
And
I love it.
And I love what Jared says is when somebody invites us into their house, because we've never solicited to go into any place. We've just said, hey, we're out there. We would love to do this. And when people get the courage to ask us to come into their agency, their department, and talk to their people, Jared Nesri, who came through our program in 2017, who is kicking ass right now and has been ever since. He kicks the door down. He says he likes to punch him in the throat and talk to him about his story that is tragic, and that is he got to that place where he didn't want to live anymore, where he was ready to take his own life, because that's what that job will do to you. Mm-hmm. That's what dealing with people like me in the past will do to you. Yeah. So I apologize to you, Josh, anyone else out there that has to suffer from the little lost junkies out there that are causing that kind of trauma. But it's tragic what's going on in life. Everyone is sick and everyone suffers when they try to help each other and get well. And when we get in there, Jared kicks open the door. Matt goes in and says, hey, this is what's going on in your brain, your mind, and your heart. And this is how we can fix it and change it. And that's the goal. And we've been very effective in doing that the last 2.5 years. I think we've done over 100 trainings now. I think the last podcast we'd been at 25. And so we're making a huge impact, and it's really cool to know about what Josh is trying to do with First Watch and implementing what's going on in other agencies so that everyone can get that. What'd you say that the pressure, the air pressure, the pressure check
between your ears,
the pressure check between their ears, and it's great. It feels good to help other people.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it does.
And you're good at it. I've watched you. You have very good energy. People can feel your genuineness, and you've been in trauma yourself, and you are relatable, and you create a safe space for people, and it's really cool.
I appreciate you saying that, because generally I'm viewed as just an asshole.
No.
Far
from.
And so is he, right?
Well, I am.
Like
From the people who are fearing what you're doing, yeah, probably them.
It's because we don't hold back. We say what's on our mind, and people don't want to hear the truth. And I'm not saying what we always say is truth. We're always going to say what's on our mind, and sometimes I'll have to apologize for what I say later. But the truth is I'd rather talk to somebody that tells me, "Hey, you're screwing up.
Yeah.
Hey, that's bullshit.
Yes.
Hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You should probably go apologize to your wife, or do you know what I mean, or whatever that is, or hey, you shouldn't." Mom says, "Hey, you should do this with your kids." You don't want anyone to tell us what to do, but I love when someone can shoot straight with me and say, "Hey, you're screwing up."
Yeah, rather than saying nothing, because that's what it used to be. Nope, push it down, say nothing, and now it's directness, and people so really feed off of it. So, with anyone listening today, like, how could they get a hold of you guys or into the programs you're running and stuff like that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so deerhollowrecovery.com on our website has all the information. It has our bios, it has our links, it has our training schedule, it has what we're doing on there. And I always just say, if you want to be a part of this, you can email me at jordan@deerhollowrecovery.com, and I'll even give my phone number. It's 801-833-6932. That's my personal cell phone number, and I will answer the phone. And if I don't answer it, I will call you back, and we will not stop until you have the help that you need. That has been our goal. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be with Deer Hollow or our program, because it isn't a perfect fit for everyone. It's very strict, and you have to be ready and willing to do that. But there are countless programs that we have relationships with that we will not stop until you or your loved one is in a safe place.
It's true, guys. He will. He'll do anything if you call him. I'm serious. So that's awesome of you.
Poor wife.
Whatever. She's just as good as you. What about you, Josh?
So I'm not going to give out my.
You don't want to give out your digits? Come on.
No, you can Google me. So I can be reached at josh@firstwatch, which is with a number 1, stwellness.com. Website there too. It's that we have offerings for people. It's an opt-in. It's okay. Well, what we have a service that we can provide, but what I do, my specialty in that is, okay, well, how do we implement this in your department? How do we tweak it to match your culture and stuff? So, we bring a new department online, and then I'm getting in touch with their admin, peer support. So it's like, okay, well, how do we make it yours? Not just, here's this product you bought. Yeah. Let's tune it to your vibration in your department.
And to be super clear, First Watch Wellness, 1ST Wellness, Watch Wellness, is a packaged system that does what Josh did in his department, where you can kind of pick up the bones of this wellness program, and then Josh Taylor fits it to your individual department.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I mean, it's as simple as just the wellness checks, like getting your teeth checked, to where, more, intensive or specific things that different individuals will have based on their circumstance, based on their lived experience, based on their childhood. I mean, and it's for their spouses, for their kids, everything. It's like everybody that we can help with this thing. It's very much a passion project for everybody that's involved. That's my whole part of it, is it's like, hey, this is part of my moving the needle forward.
Yeah.
In what I feel like has been essentially a failure for years and years and years in this profession. So
redemption.
I do. I love it.
Coming from a Godhead, that feels good.
Thanks for coming on, fellas. We appreciate you guys. Love you both.
Well, I personally want to say thank you to both of you for doing what you're doing, and speaking for the families also, because not only did you guys get yourselves where you needed to be, that effect goes into your homes too. And so for getting yourselves the help that you needed, it also shows for the people who live in your home that they can also get help. And it just made me think of the retreat we went to this weekend, and I didn't realize how much the men online, it bleeds into your homes. And I just thank you, both of you, for doing what you do. You're awesome.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being on today.
It's a privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.